Good evening, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Forge Podcast. This is episode 7, guys, and it's brought to you by, as always, by Shotgun Sports Network Alabama of the Shotgun Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for continuously tuning in through Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or iHeart, whatever it may be. Make sure you guys, if you could, just please share, like, whatever it is. Download if it's on the Audible channels, because we really appreciate that, and it really helps us out. We've got a lot to get into. We have Barron's transactions, a lot of them, as well as a series that we had in Madison. The Birmingham Legion FC wound up heading all the way out to the West Coast over in California. And then we had some more Stallions players get signed with NFL teams, as well as some of them are actually performing really well in the preseason. So maybe we'll see some of these guys get signed with the actual rosters. But then the Bulls had some transactions. We're going to wrap that up with a few Shotgun Sports Network updates as well. So, another thing, we just can't do this without the support of Blue Spring Living Water. I want to thank those guys. They keep us hydrated, and they want to keep you hydrated too, whether you go to bluespringlivingwater.com and set up the delivery right to your front door without even having to go to the grocery store, or whether you go to the convenience store, whether it's you go to the grocery store. You can find that there. It's really good water, guys. It's sourced right here in Alabama, right up the road in Blount County. And guys, we all have seen all of the news reports about the having to boil ordinances and stuff like that with the some of the city waters and stuff like that. So make sure you support these guys. It's good, clean water, and it's healthy for you. So make sure you take a step toward a healthier life with Blue Spring Living Water. And this is episode 7 of the Forge Podcast. We're going to lead things off with the Birmingham Barons, who had a bunch of transactions this week. Starting off on Tuesday, where left-handed pitcher Max Roberts was sent down to the Birmingham Barons from AAA Charlotte, as well as right-handed pitcher Juan Carrella was raised from to the Barons from High A Winston-Salem. Third baseman DJ Gladney came back to Birmingham from Winston-Salem, as well as we also saw where right-handed pitchers Dalton Roach moved to AAA Charlotte. Outfielder Jacob Burke was sent down to High A Winston-Salem. And then we saw where catcher Juan Gonzalez was sent to Birmingham from Low A Kannapolis. And then we learned as well on Tuesday that Troy Claunch, the catcher, Troy Claunch there, had retired, had announced his retirement. Then on Wednesday, we saw catcher Juan Gonzalez that we previously mentioned was transferred to the developmental list. And then right-handed pitcher Eric Adler was actually activated from the 7-day IL. On Saturday, we saw right-handed pitcher Mason Adams get moved up to AAA Charlotte. Then we had a series with in-state division rivals, the Rocket City Trash Pandas. On Tuesday, we saw the Trash Pandas strike early in the bottom of the first, and Birmingham wound up answering back with 5 of their own in the second, with Matt Hogan hitting a bases-loaded single to bring in Michael Turner and Mario Camilletti. And then Jason Matthews single to bring in Sean Gusenberg. Wilfred Veras wound up singling to bring in Matt Hogan and Jacob Gonzalez. And then there was nothing else until Gusenberg wound up hitting a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 7th. The finals for this game were Rocket City with the 1 run off of 5 hits. There was 1 error, and they stranded 8. Birmingham had the 7 runs off of 14 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 11 guys. This is insane. Birmingham has been getting a lot of folks on base this week, and honestly, there was only 1 game where they didn't go double digits in stranding men on base. So it was insane to see that stat. The fact that they only went 1 game stranding less than 10. So it's insane. Wednesday, we wound up seeing the Trash Pandas start things off with a homer in each of the first 2 innings, making the score 3-0 early. The one in the second inning was actually a 2-run homer. So the Barons wound up answering back with 5 in the top of the 5th. So Michael Turner wound up singling to bring in Mario Camilletti. Adam Hackenberg brought in Wilfred Veras. And then on his return back to the Barons, DJ Gladney wound up hitting a 3-run homer to bring in Turner and Hackenberg. So it's insane to see that guy come back and have such success here in the Magic City. That wasn't enough to seal the game, though, as Rocket City wound up scoring a run in both the 7th and the 8th to turn it off, to tie it up. And then they wound up walking it off with a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 9th. The finals for this game were Rocket City with the 7 runs off of 11 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 5. Birmingham had the 5 runs off of 12 hits. There was 1 error, and they stranded 11 again. On Thursday, Rocket City wound up starting things off with a leadoff homer in the bottom of the 2nd. They struck again within the 3rd off of a balk. Then they scored 2 more off of a couple of sac flies in the bottom of the 5th. And then the Barons, then they had 3 more in the bottom of the 7th. The Barons tried to make a run for it in the final 2 innings, where Wilfred Veras singling to bring in Terrell Tatum in the bottom of the top of the 8th. Apologize. Then Mario Camilletti singling to bring in Veras and Turner there in the 8th as well. In the 9th, DJ Gladney wound up singling to bring in Terrell Tatum. And then Turner wound up singling to bring in Veras. But that wasn't enough, as they wound up falling 2 runs short of the comeback. The finals for this game were Rocket City with the 7 runs off of 9 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 6. Birmingham had the 5 runs off of 9 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 10. On Friday, the Barons wound up starting it off early with Wilfred Veras and DJ Gladney both hitting solo shots in the 1st. Then we saw Jason Matthews singling to bring in Hackenberg in the 2nd, as well as Matthews being able to come on home off of a Mario Camilletti single. The Trash Pandas wound up cutting the lead in half with a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 3rd. The Barons wound up scoring 2 more in the 6th, as Adam Hackenberg wound up doubling to bring in Turner, and then Taishi Nakawake singling to bring in Hogan. Rocket City answered back with a leadoff homer in the bottom of the 6th, and scored again in the bottom of the 8th, but it wasn't enough to hold off the Barons, as they wound up falling 6-4. The finals for this game were Rocket City with the 4 runs off of 10 hits. There was 1 error, and they stranded 5. Barons with the 6 runs off of 12 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 4. That was the only game that they didn't strand. They didn't have more than 10 or more uh, left on base for the entire game. On Saturday, Barons started off early again with DJ Gladney hitting a single in the first to bring in Jacob Gonzalez and Wilfred Barris. Then in the second, Jacob Gonzalez wound up hitting a sac fly to bring in Sean Gusenberg. Varys wound up singling to bring in Matthews in the second as well as Tyler Neslony hitting a sac fly to bring in Mario Camilletti. The Barons wound up padding their lead in the top of the fourth with Tyler Neslony wound up hitting another sac fly to bring in Gonzalez. And then the Trash Pandas finally got on the board with a run in the bottom of the fourth. The Barons wound up scoring two more in the top of the fifth with Mario Camilletti hitting a sac fly to bring in Terrell Tatum. And then Jacob Gonzalez doubling to bring in Gusenberg. Rocket City answered back with three of their own in the bottom of the fifth, and they struck again with a solo shot in the bottom of the seventh. But DJ Gladney was able to seal it with by scoring in the bottom of the top of the eighth off of a wild pitch. The finals for this game were Rocket City with the 5 runs off of 7 hits. There were 2 errors, and they stranded 8. Barons with the 9 runs off of 11 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 13. On Sunday, it was a slow start, but Barons wound up getting things started with a Mario Camilletti solo homer to start things off in the 6th. And then in the top of the 7th, we saw Jason Matthews wound up singling to bring in Sean Gusenberg. But then in the top of the 8th, Terrell Tatum wound up doubling the lead with a 2-run homer to bring in Hackenberg as well. Trash Pandas tried to make a comeback in the bottom of the 8th by loading the bases, but were only able to capitalize off with a single run off of a sac fly. The finals for this game were Rocket City with 1 run off of 6 hits. There were no errors, and they stranded 15. Just a bad day of pitching, honestly. They had 9 walks in that game for the Birmingham pitchers there. It was a struggle. But Birmingham's offense wound up bringing it in pretty good because they had the 4 runs off of 10 hits. There was 1 error, and they stranded 6. So it was insane how many people they wound up stranding on this in this series. The standings look like this, with Tennessee in first place. Rocket City 10 games behind now because of this series with Birmingham. And then Birmingham's right behind them with a single game behind them with 11 games behind first place. And then Chattanooga is now 13 games behind in fourth place. Barons seemed like they're trying to get something going. I think the organization is starting to see that we need a little help. They sent help, and it looks like it's working. But they're going to need it as they face the number 1 team in the Southern League North this week, the Tennessee Smokies. So hopefully we can cut that lead, and I know we've got a series with them here next week, and then we have a series up there, I think, in a couple more weeks. So I know it's getting close to the end. So hopefully we can get something going and get ready for the playoffs. These new additions seems like it's helping, but we really need to keep it going, keep this momentum, and hopefully uh, it's they stay with it. The Birmingham Legion, switching things over to the Legion of uh, the USL. The Legion FC wound up acquiring midfielder Rita Zuir or Zahir on loan from CF Montreal of the MLS on Wednesday. But they headed out to the West Coast to take on Monterey Bay FC on Saturday. And after a pretty defensive game for Birmingham there in the first, Kobe wound up getting things started by finding the back of the net in the 33rd minute. And then they wound up coming out of halftime with Dawson McCartney making a really good pass over to Pino, who knocked it in off an amazing shot. If you can go to the pages, you can see it there. We shared it from the Legion FC. That was a really, really good shot. He kicked it after Dawson McCartney wound up passing it over to him in the box. He wound up kicking it up to avoid a defender, and then wound up kicking it into the goal. So it was really cool shot there. And then that made it 2-0. And then Monterey Bay wound up scoring in the 60th minute. And things got really scary in the 72nd minute because Alex Crognali wound up getting red carded, putting the Crew behind a man with over 10 minutes left to go in the match. So really scary there, but they wound up pulling through and keeping the lead. So as it stands, we are 10, 8, and 5, and still 5th in the Eastern Conference. On Thursday, the Legion will be unveiling their new training facility in Dunham Valley, right off of 280 out there. So stoked to be out there. We're going to cover that for you guys on Thursday. So stay tuned to the pages. Make sure you're liking, follow all the pages so that you know what's going on there. Switching things over to the Birmingham Stallions. We had a few players wound up signing some more NFL contracts. Guard Matt Caskey wound up signing with the LA Rams on Tuesday. Wish him the best there. And then on Wednesday, the Commanders wound up signing Alex Taylor, tackle there. And then Armani Taylor Prialu there in for the Commanders there. On Thursday, the Bengals wound up signing Carlos Davis. For a while, I don't know if he wound up being the sack leader, but for a while he was leading in sacks in the UFL. So wish him the best there in Cincinnati. And then on Friday, it was announced that Jonathan Garvin was signed with the 49ers. So wish all those guys the best of luck. And we saw that in the NFL preseason this past week starting, we saw some guys shine, like Adrian Martinez, the MVP of the league and the championship game. He wound up facing a bunch of his former teammates, taking on the Washington Commanders as he was playing for the Jets there. He was 6 for 10 for 104 yards passing. He had 2 carries for 24 yards, and he's able to show off a bunch of his scrambling skills. So it's great to see him performing really well. And on the other side of that game, it was great to see Ramiz Ahmed being perfect on the day for the Commanders, the former kicker for the Birmingham Stallions that came in for Chris Blewett there. about mid-season. Wound up signing. He was one of the first guys that got signed off of the Birmingham Stallions. But he wasn't actually a part of the Stallions at that time because Chris Blewett had already come back. But he had a PAT on the night and then a 40-yard field goal. So hopefully we can see him make the roster there. A.J. Thomas wound up having 4 tackles for the Pats as they took on the Panthers. So a bunch of these guys getting out there and showing off their skills, showing that this team really, this league really is a second chance for these guys, these players. But elsewhere in the UFL, former USFL New Orleans Breakers head coach and from 2023 and last year's head coach of the Memphis Showboats, John DeFilippo was announced to step down on Saturday. So we wish him the best of luck and hope the Showboats can get something going there. They had a rough season last season, so I'm not sure if that's part of what they're doing to kind of address that. I don't know. They signed a lot of people that were with the Breakers previous season, and the Breakers were really a good team, but who knows? Maybe it's just not, the place for John there. We wish Coach Flip the best, though. He's a really cool dude, really good leader. He wound up, 2 years ago, 2023, wound up stepping out on the field with a boot because he wanted to lead those guys. He had just had a procedure on his foot. A really good leader there. So wish him the best of luck in his next endeavors. Switching things over to the Birmingham Bulls, who had a few transactions this week, as it was announced on Tuesday that forward Scott Donahue was re-signed with the team. And then it was also announced that the Bulls are bringing back defenseman Matt Clark. So excited to see these guys come back at camp. As soon as we find any information out about camp and then the promotional schedule, we'll get that to you as soon as possible. Elsewhere, so switching things over to Shotgun Sports Network. We're trying to get a few things done with the things are getting busy. We're trying to get ready for the summer, and we've been working, our tech team has been working on revamping the shotgunsportsnetwork.ca website. All the podcasts are on the front page, so if you can't find us anywhere else, if you don't do social media, I don't know how you're finding us, but whether it be whatever it may be, you can find all of our podcasts. We have a couple CFL podcasts, three CFL podcasts, NHL podcasts, bunch of other stuff. We're working on another potential podcast coming up that I may be a part of, not sure. A few things coming up for the Shotgun Sports Network as a whole. I told you guys we've got a lot more interviews coming up for the media coming your way this coming up week. So stay tuned for that. A lot of things coming up because it's starting to get busy. Fall's coming up. Barons are in the playoffs. The Legion looks like they're going to make a run for the playoffs. Looks like, and then you've got the Bulls about to start here in a couple months, as well as the Squadron starting up in a couple months. So it's going to be stoked to see what all we're going to get into. Make sure you guys are following us and have the notifications on for all the latest updates. So that's all I got for this week. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll see you guys next week. Good night.